One of my favorite desserts growing up that I always ate with my mom's side of the family was Spumone. It's an Italian-American ice cream dessert, and I hadn't had it for at least 6 years because I've been vegan and I haven't made it or found it anywhere. And I made it for dessert for my family one night, and it turned out so good and it was so easy that I have to share the recipe. Our ingredients are 3 pints of vegan ice cream, chocolate, vanilla, and pistachio. You could make your own if you wanted, but buying it is way easier and just as tasty. You are also going to need a jar of maraschino cherries for the liquid and the cherries, cacao nibs, chocolate chips, or nuts, and 2 to 4 ounces of Bailey's almond. Get a bread pan and line it with parchment paper. Don't skip the parchment paper or you're not going to be able to get this out of the pan in one piece once it's frozen solid. I would also highly recommend using 2 pieces like I have here so that you line all 4 sides. That also makes it a lot easier to get out. So we're going to start with the pistachio layer because that's the only one we're not like adding stuff to, and it's going to stay the most frozen. So go ahead and scrape it all out of the carton and into the pan and spread it out into a nice even layer, trying to avoid any holes. And once we get it all nice and even, go ahead and put that in the freezer, and we're going to start working on our vanilla and cherry layer. So get a big bowl and scoop the whole carton into it. If your ice cream is still kind of hard, if you have time, you can leave it on the counter for 30 to 60 minutes to let it soften. If you don't have time, you can put it in the microwave, but don't over microwave it. Do like 5 or 10-second intervals, just enough to soften it so that you can stir with a fork or a whisk and get out any lumps, but you don't want it to be warm at all or completely melted, or it's going to take way too long to refreeze, and we don't want that. I think I added about 3 ounces of the maraschino cherry liquid total. I would say add an ounce or so at a time, stir it, taste it, add more as you need to, just until it's as cherry flavored as you want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and add the chopped cherries into the mixture, and we're going to give it a stir, and then we're going to pour this whole mixture into the bread pan on top of the pistachio layer. Go ahead and use a fork or something to kind of spread the cherries into an even layer so that when we slice it, they're evenly distributed. And once you're done, go ahead and put the bread pan back in the freezer to keep it cold and start to solidify that cherry layer while we work on our next one, the chocolate almond layer. Use the same bowl, don't make another dish for yourself. A little cherry residue is fine, you don't even need to rinse it. Go ahead and scoop the whole carton, same thing, into the bowl. And we're basically going to do the same thing here. We're just going to stir it up, try and get out all the lumps so we make sure the Bailey's gets evenly distributed, and then we're going to pour it again into the bread pan. I chose to use Bailey's for this because it has a really nice almond flavor that really complements the chocolate flavor. I think I used 3 ounces, maybe 4 ounces total. Just so you know, one standard drink of Bailey's is 4.6 ounces, and we're going to cut this into like 10 servings, so you're not going to get yourself or your family members drunk with it. But if you don't do alcohol in your house, you could use almond extract, or you could just totally skip the almond part and just do a chocolate layer, and it would be awesome that way too. So we're going to pour this into the bread pan, and I added cacao nibs. You could also do nuts or chocolate chips. I think I mentioned that when I was talking about the ingredients. It's kind of up to you, whatever you want. The first time I made it, I actually didn't put any chunks other than the pistachios already in the pistachio ice cream, and it turned out great that way too. It's really just what you like or what you feel like buying. So you can kind of tap it and get some of the air bubbles out if you want. And I sprinkled more cacao nibs on top, and then you want to let it freeze overnight if you can, at least 2 hours before you try and slice it. Use a knife or like, I don't know, something skinny to kind of loosen the edges, and then flip it over and tap it really hard on the counter and it'll come out. Don't try and pull the parchment paper to pull it out. The parchment paper will just tear because it's kind of damp from the ice cream. So definitely use something to loosen it. Once you have it out, go ahead and peel the parchment paper off, and we're going to cut it into slices. I really, really like the way this looks when you slice it, but if you wanted to, you could do 3 layers instead of on top of each other side by side and then use an ice cream scoop. But again, it's fun in slices and it's more traditional that way. So once you get it sliced, put another piece of parchment paper over the top or wax paper and put the pan back on it and flip it back into the pan and put it back into the freezer for a little bit to solidify. Because I only waited 2 hours when I was making the video before I slice it. Overnight would be better, and you might not have to put it back in the freezer. So when it's time to serve it, dump it out of the pan again and pull the slices apart. I think it's really fun and looks really pretty if you put like a little swirl of chocolate syrup on the plate and then put the ice cream on it to like plate it pretty. Totally not necessary, but you know, it's fun. And that's it. I told you it's super easy. We're melting ice cream, stirring stuff into it, putting it in layers, and slicing it again. Like, it's so easy, but it's so good. If you grew up eating spumoni and you're vegan now or you can't eat dairy for some reason, I would really recommend you try this. My sister was so excited when I made it because it seriously was like a blast from our childhood. If you like it, or if you have comments or questions or anything, feel free to like tag me at Emily's Earth Ethics or Herbivorous Emily on Instagram, or ask a question down below and I'll try and make sure I watch for them. See you next time.